what is required for a DPO, who can become a DPO, right? If you look at this slide, it gives you a wonderful overview of what is expected from a DPO or data privacy manager. So these are the areas which is going to definitely have some challenges for you, right? The first thing is a lot of people think DPO is only a privacy job. I have nothing to do with in terms of me knowing the business or me knowing the product and services. That's never going to work out, because the first thing that you need to do, part of your data privacy function, is that you need to know the organization's collection points where the data comes in. For that, you definitely need to know the product and services, the process through which the data comes in, right? And once you know that, then you have to build your privacy program, for which you need to know the legal, regulatory, and contractual obligations. You need to know your role as a controller, processor, joint controller. So this becomes the scope of the privacy program. So once you have an idea about this, the next is, where do we stand in a privacy compliance, right? If you're starting a program, definitely you're gonna start at a very early stage, and of course, all of those obligations you may not be complying, right? And why do we do a gap assessment? This helps us to know where do we lack, as well as how much efforts is required. We can develop a roadmap part of it, right? So till then, this 3 steps you can definitely call part of your governance activities, which is typically to know what it takes to build the program, the strategy part in terms of scoping your privacy program. So once you have done these activities, then you will jump in terms of the next 3-4 activities in parallel, not essentially in sequence. You may need to develop the privacy policy procedures, and you may start identifying the personal data across various collection channels. You may do it in a manual method, or you may use inventory tools such as data discovery tools. Data privacy awareness is a key activity. It's not a one-time activity which is started at the time of developing the policy procedures. It goes on till the point, or there is no end to this particular activity. It's a continuous activity. And you will be starting to implement the controls, which is your technical and organizational measures, your people, process, and technology controls, which is identified both from the gap assessment as well as your policies and procedures. Then you may go for some specific obligation based on your controller, processorship. What is your obligations specifically? I've called out some of them, like as a controller, you may need to perform DPIAs, data protection impact assessment, privacy by design requirements, transfer impact assessment, legitimate interest assessments, right? These are some of the important assessments which is mandated by the law, right? Along with the records of processing activity, right? And one of the key challenges for any data privacy manager is about your data subject rights fulfillment, right? It's closely connected towards your data discovery process. You need to know what data we have, then only we can effectively respond to those requests. But it's not that easy. There is a lot of decision points when it comes to data subject rights management. And apart from this, you need to also take care of the inevitable, which could be a data breach, right? So we need to prepare ourselves in terms of how do we need to respond to it, as well as some of the important legal and regulatory requirements on those breach reporting part. And finally, this is a journey. A lot of people have a perspective that data privacy compliance is a checklist exercise, right? It's not. It's a journey. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort to mature in this particular journey. It could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depends on the scale and complexity of the organization, right? Now, why do we have taken these 2 courses? Of course, majority of the participants are going to be Indian participants, and that's the reason we are creating this course in line with 2 important laws. One, to cater to our Indian audience, and second, of course, if you're not from India, don't worry, we are having GDPR as the core backbone of this particular course. The reason is, one, GDPR is a gold standard. Whichever part of the world you're going to work in data privacy, you will be able to cater to this, right? And once you know GDPR, of course, you can relate to many other laws around the world. And the second is about the DPDP Act, which is a law in India which is gonna be enforced expected maybe this monsoon, and that's gonna have a lot of work in Indian ecosystem as well. And of course, Indian companies are not only having requirements to the DPDP Act, of course, to GDPR and other places where they are working as processors, right? So DPO responsibilities are called out in both these obligations, explicitly called out. Especially GDPR has some specific requirements what is expected out of a out of a DPO, right? And in the Indian law, we have significant data fiduciary category, which has some very important obligations as well, right? So keep these requirements in mind whenever you are going to perform these obligations. Remember, this is a legal obligation. You do not have a choice in terms of doing one and neglecting others, right? So this is something which is very important for the aspiring DPOs and data privacy managers to be aware of. Now, this is a very important question which you need to have an answer, right? What is required for me to become a successful DPO, right? So, a successful DPO usually has requirements from three different areas, right? One, you definitely need to know how to interpret the legal requirement, right? Does it mean all of you have to become a lawyer? No. Even I am not a lawyer. I train around 40 people at least every month who are from legal background. I'm very proud to say that. So I'm never I'm not a person from any legal expertise, but still, what is required from you is to how do you interpret the legal requirements from the law. If GDPR has 99 clauses, you need to know what does that clause means, what it means for your organization, what is expected from you to perform to comply to that obligation, right? So that is the legal expertise. It doesn't mean you need to go and get a law degree. Gone are the days where only attorneys used to rule data privacy field, but with the digital evolution and digital trust requirements, it is a combination of legal, a combination of your data protection team, right? A combination of your even program management people have a good value add, because these are all big programs. You need to have the skill sets of business skills, right? You need to know how to navigate a program, how to implement, liaise with the different stakeholders, correct? You need to have a good technical awareness in terms of data protection part, right? You need to know how to manage the risk that comes from personal data processing, right? This conflict of interest is a very important clause specifically under GDPR, right? So GDPR calls out this clause, which means there are specific expectations that you cannot participate in the operations and you can also be acting as a DPO. That creates a conflict of interest. That is why usually CISOs, CROs or legal heads cannot be a DPO in GDPR. As of now, in Indian law, there is no specific call out like that, but it is indirectly stated for significant data fiduciaries, right? What are the certifications which people can aspire? So these are certifications which are commonly looked in the market: CIPP, CIPM, DCPP, ISO 27701. So my take is like whichever part of the world you go, CIPP plus CIPM combination is considered as a DPO ready certification. So I would say if you're going to invest money, invest in something which is going to have value for you for the entire life, whichever part of the world you go, right? Although CIPP is a GDPR law, but it's considered as a gold standard all around the world, right? A lot of people from US, Middle East, right? I have trained them on CIPP, although GDPR is not a law for them, but this is considered as a gold standard in all around the world, right? So these are some of the important skill sets. So you may start any of these skill set, right? It's only about how you take up the other areas which is expected from you. It is impossible for some person to have a legal expertise, be a risk management pro, and also have good program management skill. It is impossible, right? So the alternate to that is you can start from one career line and you need to sort of upgrade your knowledge in all these areas. Okay, so this is a important aspect that you need to keep in mind, that you need to continuously upgrade your skill set towards becoming a successful DPO. Okay, So keep your questions coming. I'll answer your questions anyways. I was explaining about the conflict of interest clause. So GDPR says that if you are performing roles where you have to decide the purpose and means of processing, you cannot be a DPO as well as doing those dual functions, right? So just keep in mind, especially in GDPR, this is taken very seriously, right? And in India, if you are working for a significant data fiduciary, then this is something which you need to keep in mind. The reason is, like, if you are a DPO and reporting to the CISO, the CISO's priorities are very different when it is a data breach involving personal data, right? So it does create a conflict of interest where the CISO's priority will be towards sort of remediation of those breach, focusing on how to contain the breach, right? Find the root cause and try to remove the threat actors, right? But GDPR expects, or data privacy laws expect, you to prioritize your data subject as well as your supervisory authority notification as well, right? So there are certain constraints on that, right? And that's something which you need to be aware of. All right. So apart from this, these are some of the examples of conflicting roles, which is head of marketing, legal, IT, CFO, CEO, CEO, almost all the C-suite level. You cannot operate as a DPO provided that you participate in some or the other decision making on personal data, right? So that is the important thing that you need to keep in mind, right? So what are the traits of a successful DPO? Legal acumen, technical awareness. I think we have sort of discussed that, right? Now, I told all these things, like what does my program, which we're going to cover for the DPO, is going to help you to cater to this, right? So our program is developed to right from scratch, to start from fundamentals, right? You will be surprised when you start the session. We have given so much emphasis for the fundamentals because a lot of people may come from different backgrounds, right? My training is to ensure that even you come from a non-privacy background, non-technical background, non-legal background, I will treat everyone with due respect and try to help you with the fundamentals to ensure that you are sort of coming at par before I take it to the next level, right? So in this course, we will start in terms of what are the important aspects of governance, right? So we speak about how to develop your policies, procedures. We'll give you enough templates. What are the privacy notice components to build the governance structures, right? And we will be catering to privacy by design. What are the different types of controls? We will do a lot of practical exercise in each and every chapter, right? So we will run through a live exercise on what are the mistakes people do in terms of doing their privacy notices, right? So you will see each and every chapter will be accompanied by some interesting exercises, right? Apart from this, how does an automated data discovery tool discover the data? What is your role as a DPO in these cases, right? And how do you actually validate or reconcile the data? These are some of the interesting nuances, right? Records of processing activity, a very important activity, which is a backbone of a privacy program, which we have to discover all the data across collection channels, as well as what data you share outside the organization, where do you store the data, how long you store the data, how do you protect the data. All of these are very important critical aspects which you need to take care, right? So we will look at live templates of ROPA. We will be discussing in terms of what are the mistakes people do in the records of processing activity and how to avoid that, and we will be giving you templates in terms of doing the same activity as well, right? This is something which is very, very critical, right? I would say that if you do records of processing activity properly, 50% of your privacy program compliance is taken care, because that's the core element of any data privacy program, right? So this is a sort of view that how people make mistakes and what you should not do. We will give you the obligations part from the governance perspective, right? And a very interesting chapter, my favorite chapter, is a cookie audit chapter, right? So we start with the fundamentals, second we cover the governance, and the third will be the records of processing activity, and fourth chapter is the cookie audit. So we will discuss about cookies in detail, what is expected from you, what is expected from you to not create a dark patterns, and how do you categorize the cookie, how do you collect the consent, and we will also try to do a live demo of a cookie audit as well. Okay, and with the cookie audit, then we move into the next chapter, which is assessments, a very important area where a lot of questions, a lot of intricacies are there. So what we do here is we pick up a live assessment for DPIA, transfer impact assessment, as well as legitimate interest assessment. We'll give you n number of scenarios in which cases you will do a LIA, right? There's going to be lot of interesting question and answers which we will be doing part of these, right? What are the nuances, right? What you should do and what you should not do part of these impact assessments, right? So a lot of interesting things will be discussed. As I promised, it will be a live walkthrough of a completed DPIA, completed transfer impact assessment, as well as completed legitimate interest assessments. Okay, so these are some of the case studies. We will take a live case studies which you can relate to a lot of your practical jobs. Okay, so that's your fifth chapter. Then sixth chapter is about data subject rights. So we will be looking at what are the various data subject rights both in GDPR as well as DPDP Act. There is an interesting table which you see on the right is the interplay between the data subject rights as well as the various lawful bases that we will be discussing. The data subject rights act flow. What are the templates? How do you fulfill this request? What are the decision points? Very important. Unless you do data subject rights fulfillment, you will not be able to know those decision points, right? The decision points is something you'll definitely I will mention it as a key takeaway out of this chapter. And my next favorite chapter out of all these things would be my incident and breach management, right? So what do you mean by incident and breach from a personal data perspective? What is expected from you as a controller and a processor? And we will be doing a live breach impact assessment, right? And we will try to quantify the breach, and we will take a quantifiable decision of what is the risk and what is the high risk, right? So this is again going to be discussed in detail, and we will again run through a live breach impact assessment. Plus there's going to be lot of wonderful scenario questions, around 10 minimum scenario questions of different situations. You will be deciding what is an incident, what is a breach, is it a reportable to authority alone or to the data subject. So we will be running through all of these things one by one. Okay, so these are those case studies I'm just showing as a sample, right? So then we move on to the last chapter, which is about your vendor due diligence. So here we are going to look at the three important activities. One is due diligence, second is your data processing agreement, and third is a vendor risk management. So what are the expectations from a controller and processor on these particular areas, and what is expected from us to manage these requirements, right? So this is about this part. So the core objective, I think I've already covered. Whatever is in the obligations which we saw in the first roadmap, everything is going to be covered is our course objective in short, right? So this is the course chapters, module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, the first 4 modules, and these are the other 4 modules. This is what I went through one by one. You can get the brochures available. So what is a key differentiator from us or from anyone else is providing this course? So there are few people who provide this course, but they might be 3x the cost of it. But I'm pretty sure that no one goes to this level of hands-on, right? And many of them may touch the surface level. You may given few assignments that may not be sufficient for chapter-wise nuances of each and every topic, right? And you are going to be sort of enjoying these sessions in terms of how much of interaction that happens. It's not going to be those sessions where someone is going to come and read their slides, right? Anyone who has been part of my trainings, or you can probably check in LinkedIn or sort of hear from other people, it's going to be highly interactive session, and each and every one's question will be definitely answered, right? And you're going to get a lot of templates and materials which you can use towards your implementation as well, right? Except those high value consulting materials which you may ask, except the templates and other things, I'll definitely support you whichever is going to be useful for you, right? And the good thing about this session is that it's recorded, because my other IAPP sessions are not recorded, because IAPP has given a very strict mandate for us that the sessions cannot be shared to the participants. Whereas these sessions are going to be recorded, and you can navigate if you have unfortunately missed the session or you want to hear it again and again. You have the access for those sessions as well as the recordings. Okay, so these are typically the different courses. I would say DPO hands-on course is the baseline for all the courses, right? The reason is once you do these courses, the other certification courses also becomes easy. Or if you have started with the IAPP certification, this course covers the delta of what is required for you to perform the job at hands-on, right? That's a major difference. So why should you join this course? People who are from the varied backgrounds, who are either from the risk management or from the legal, or consultants who are working in various consulting firms, helping organization build the privacy program, auditors, right? For you, this course is excellent option, right? And as I told you, I start from scratch and I gradually handhold you to the complexity of data privacy program. As such, there is no prerequisite for this program.